We're going to talk about some saws for a little bit. First saw we're going to talk about is a coping saw. The coping saw basically is used for making irregular cuts or making curved cuts. This saw is the only one that the teeth point back toward the handle, or you cut on the pull stroke. Also, it's the only one of the saws that I'm going to talk about where you actually have to replace the blade when it gets broken. Okay, so this saw basically is used for irregular cuts, for making curved cuts, and it's used on the pull stroke, or the cut is made on the pull stroke. The next saw I want to talk about is a back saw. Back saw has really fine teeth and is used for making really fine cuts for finish work. The only thing, and the reason it's called a back saw, is the fact that it has a really stiff back so that you can get a really straight cut using it. But however, the stiff back on it limits the depth that you can cut with that saw. So therefore, you want to make a really fine cut with limited depth. This would be a good saw to use for that. A larger version of this saw would be a miter saw that goes into a miter frame for making miter cuts. That's a larger version of this same saw. The other two saws that I want to talk about are basically these two saws. One is a rip saw, one is a crosscut saw. The basic difference is in the way the teeth are shaped, but in most school shops you can tell which one is which by the size of the teeth. The crosscut saw will have more teeth, the rip saw will have less teeth per inch. Okay? And it's basically the way the saw number of teeth on. Okay, again, the rip saw, and some instructors maybe will have it labeled onto the saw, but the rip saw is a rip saw that goes with the grain of the wood, meaning the way the tree grows, with the lengthways of the tree is the grain of the wood. That's where the grain runs. The rip saw is for cutting in that direction. Again, most school shops will have the rip saw will have more teeth than a crosscut saw, but basically it's in the way that the teeth are formed. The crosscut saw has less teeth per inch, and they're shaped more in a diamond pattern for cutting across the grain, actually cutting the grain of the wood across the grain. And again, most school shops will have more teeth per inch than the crosscut saw. What I would like to do now is to show you actually the use of a crosscut saw, and I will do that by first off drawing a line on the materials with a pencil, a nice line so that we can see it. Put the square and the pencil aside, and then actually clamp this piece of material into a vise. This form of cutting is a crosscut. I'm going to cut across the grain of the wood. With a crosscut, put my left hand on, if I'm right-handed, put my left hand on the wood, use my thumb as a guide, but make sure that you have your thumb up and tipped into the edge of the saw so that it does not come in contact with the edge of your teeth, just the edge of the back, the side of the saw. Actually start your saw with a pulling motion and then a push motion. Use the entire length of the saw to make strong, firm, straight strokes. Get your saw started properly, and follow that line all the way through. Okay, now I'm going to show you a little bit about a rip saw. Remember, the rip saw is going with the grain of the wood, or the lines of the wood is going the length of this piece of material, and that's the way the length of the tree. I have put this piece of material into the vise in this manner because I want it supported as close to the line as I can to get rid of the chatter when we're using the saw. And again, you start the saw basically in the same manner, using your thumb as a guide. You start your saw in a pull motion, and sometimes you have to do it a couple of times before you start using a push stroke. And a very careful start on your line so that you can get it started straight. And with a straight back and forth motion, you can follow that line right straight down and through. Okay, in review on the cutting, would like to emphasize first off that anytime you want a line, it's a square line, you mark it with a square and with a pencil so that you have your square line marked onto your wood where you need your line put. You may want to use a ruler to measure that point before you make your square marked line. Again, remember that this ruler is marked off an 1/8 of an inch on one side of the ruler and 1/16 of an inch on the other side. And there's an 8 on one side and a 1/16 on the other side. Make sure that you have your wood marked to the proper length. Make sure that you have your line drawn before you start sawing on a piece of wood.